Hey, it's Paul with Bike Skins back with another video. In this video, we're going to show you how to design a wrap, or show you how I design wraps for helmets. We've had a lot of popularity on some of our recent helmet wraps, almost more than some of our bike wraps. And so a lot of people ask kind of what's the process, what's the limitations, and things like that. Or if you're a designer and you're wanting to design something for your own helmet, you may want to kind of see how I've done it in the past and what works out good for me in order to get a feel for what direction you should go. So I had a customer contact me and they wanted to do a samurai theme helmet, and so they sent me the model of their helmet and everything. I like to start with a good side shot of the helmet, so you want to make sure it's facing exactly sideways. And so I've got a little brush here. I can kind of point out a few things. So when I wrap the helmet, I wrap most of the side areas and also the back areas of the helmet. I don't really wrap the vents and things like that. So I'm just wrapping only this kind of black area that I have circled here, and also this trim cap area right here as well. And so another thing I want to point out too is that when I wrap helmets, this works best for me. You can't just do one sheet because you'll have so much excess wrinkles everywhere that you really just can't stretch it out of the design. It's better to kind of plan ahead where you're going to have your seams. And so what I like to do is I mostly set up the design area to be this area of the helmet, so like around in here, and then also on the other side, and then also plan to design a strip that goes down the middle back of the helmet. So with that in mind, normally around in this area I'll have like a pattern or a solid color that's kind of busy. I don't really have like graphic elements of like lettering or like images or anything that overlap into that area, because that's where the seam's gonna be, right? So another thing too is, this has to be removed whenever you're doing an install. Like you may have seen the other videos. And then there's some areas like under here. See how this kind of goes underneath there? You just have to use some finesse with how you cut this, and then tuck it up into there with like a silicone squeegee to kind of achieve that, because a lot of these vents you can't remove. You can remove this face shield. After you remove this trim piece, the whole face shield comes off. All right, so with that being said, let's talk about setting up the document. So the first thing I do is I scale it up to be the size that it actually is. So one thing you may do is lay out like a tape measure or a ruler. And so let's just say this point right here is like 1 foot. So what you would do is you would just go in Photoshop and set up your rulers, and you could drag over where 1 foot is basically with your guidelines. And so then you would just scale up your helmet to be that size in the ruler, or it'd actually be a picture of the ruler with the helmet. So you just scale up the image. Let me drag this ruler over here. You would scale up the image to line up to it. So basically, let me show you how I do that. This is kind of a crude drawing of this ruler, but basically I would just scale this up and I'd say, oh, right at that point is right where the center of that is a foot. So let's get that accurate. Okay, so now I'm going to move this all back over here. So then the next thing I do is in the background, this is kind of distracting because there's like red coats and everything behind there. One thing you could do is you could kind of just outline the outside of the helmet. Like you could do this very carefully. I'm doing it quick right now, but you could just outline the outside of the helmet and just put a white layer over that, like so. But I think all I need to do, just to kind of help it not be distracting, is basically just kind of blend in this red. So I'm going to select this cream color and just highlight the image, and then just kind of do a color brushing on this red just so it's not as distracting. Because sometimes when you're designing something with colors, if there's something in the background, that coloring in the background can actually distract you and make you not like the way the helmet's kind of looking, and you may not know why. You may not understand it. So if you just at least get rid of some of the distractions, you'll be good to go. And then also you'll see that the whole document, this whole document here is oversized to the helmet. So this whole area is oversized, and that's because when you start setting up the design and you cut out the pieces, you want to have bleed and overlap. So we may, as we start selecting the area of the helmet, like let's say we have our whole design flattened out, you know, the area that we select may be like this big. So it's going to go a couple inches under it, and then from behind it, it might come 6 or 8 inches back, and it might go around like this. And then of course, when you wrap the helmet, everything that's, past this point is just going to be trimmed away. All right, so now let me get some of this out of here. All right, so now let me go ahead and move this guideline too. So now the next step is you want to cut out where the sticker's going to be, or where the design's going to be, so it lets the background show through. So all you want to do there is just make sure you have a mask selected. I can get rid of the mask. So then you just click on this mask button, see the mask there. And then what I like to do, there's selection tools and things like that, but I find that this polygon selection tool works best. It's a little tedious. You don't have to be super accurate with it, because all these wraps, they're all oversized, so nothing's cut to fit the exact trim edge of anything. So you're not really dealing with something where it has to be so accurate or it'll be off. What you're doing is you're just selecting out the area so visually you can see where the placement of the elements in the design will be located on the helmet. And also, you don't want a bunch of you don't want a bad selection where you're just selecting it without really going over the contours and things like that, because then, if you're showing it to a client or a customer, it's just gonna look really sloppy. So you do want to get it somewhat close. So just go all around all these edges. Anywhere you see these this is like a little trim piece, go over that. And then what I'm doing here is I'm actually gonna do a contoured area around this trim piece, and then I'm gonna select the inside of that and leave a little bit of an edge, and that'll kind of give a visual indication of where that is. When you're setting up a design with different elements, you want to be thinking about where you're placing the elements in relation to the helmet, the visor on the helmet, the trim pieces and things like that. And so now we're gonna hold down the Alt key, and we're just gonna deselect this vent area. And that should be about it. So now I'm gonna fill this in with black and make sure that I have the mask selected and have black selected here. And so we're just gonna fill that in with black, and it lets what is underneath show through, which is white. So if I just draw on this now, you can see that as I draw it, it kind of passes through the cutout. That's what we want. And then I'm also going to select this big trim piece and fill it in too, but as I select it, you'll see them kind of not really selecting all the way to the edge of the first selection. I'm just leaving a thin little line there. That's going to give me a good visual indication of where that section is. So again, this does not have to be accurate as well, because when I cut out this section, it's going to be, you know, an inch or so all the way around it, and so whoever's installing it can locate that. And then when I cut this section out, the big section here, it's not going to have this section removed. That's something that the installer will trim out. Okay, so now let's take a look at what the customer gave me. So they gave me this they gave me a few reference images here, and I didn't really look at them too closely. Samurai images are really easy to find if you just Google those. A lot of these are they're all different elements too. They're kind of like, you know, posing. Some of them's just a helmet. Some of them's like, you know, more artistic styling, like these two. Some of them are kind of like modern looking. I'm really fine with using any one of those as long as the resolution looks really good. So that one right here, I feel like this one would kind of work out really good because it kind of has that manila kind of tan background to it, and that could be really cool. I want to see how big some of these other ones are too. This one is like a low resolution screenshot, and there's not a lot of movement going on. So I try to look at the ones that are dynamic. I don't like using ones that are a picture of a picture. So these are decals that are put on a tank, or if like it's a picture of a tattoo. It's just so much cleanup work to mess with those that you can't really do anything with it. I like the dynamic ones. So this looks like a screen cap as well too. It's got the logo there to show that what the screen cap was. I don't really like his expression. That looks a little goofy. I feel like this one's the one that I'm kind of more gravitating to. So let me show you a software I use. It's called Topaz Gigapixel. So this is an up-res application basically. So I'm gonna go to this root folder and find those images. And then select the image that I wanted to use, which is this one. So you can see it's really pixelated. Now this software cleans it up. You can see how once it kind of renders, it cleans it up. Right here, his hands kind of look a little weird. So right away, this kind of makes me think that it could be an AI image. There's a lot of other things in here that kind of look weird and artifacty. Like if I look at the way this is colored, there's no real distinct looking things in there. But let's try it and see. And if we kind of, you know, these are kind of connected because you'd have to cut out all this stuff. Let's just look at it and see what the placement looks like. So I'm just gonna save it as being up-resed. So it's basically making it larger and correcting the JPEG and pixelation in it. We can use AI to kind of create one of these images too. But let's just first look at this one. Okay, so I go back to the document here. We're just going to place it in there. Let's go to current customers, helmet, and there's our same image. It's got 4x on it. You can tell that that's the way Topaz names it. All right, so let's drag this below the helmet and see how it looks. gonna resize it a little bit, and so I linked it in there. It's not a raster layer, it's kind of linked, so that's good, because if you resize it down and you're like, hey, I just want it there, well, if you resized it and it was in the document, you know, all your resolution will be lost, but this is linked, so the resolution's still in there. Okay, so what I want to do is, let me get another layer here so I can kind of show the visualizations of what I'm talking about. And let me pick the color here. All right, so what I want to do is I want to picture the main area of the helmet kind of being like right through here, maybe even more towards the front, right in there. And that's because back through here, there's going to be a seam, and across here, there's going to be a seam, and then there'll be one seam in the middle where the two side pieces meet. So, and I'd like for it to take up most of the helmet. You don't want to just have the main element of the guy be like in a small corner. But this one, it does has the waves and things like that, so we may kind of have them in the corner just a little bit like that. And so this kind of works because, remember I said where the seam is, I like to have busy patterns. So there could be, that's kind of a busy pattern, the red clouds and stuff. And then back here is a solid color. And where that solid color is, it actually changes on the other side of that vent over here. So you can easily have a seam that kind of works out with that. But as I look at this too, there's issues going on with this grunge right here, especially right in here. I may kind of clean that up. But if you look at this again, you can tell like this would be much better if that was detailed roses, or if his hands were like actual fists or something like that. Let's take a look at, this is where the tutorial video is really gonna go to a different place. If we go to, I'm gonna show you how I use AI and what I kind of come up with. So I use this, I've used Midjourney in the past, and Midjourney I think is slightly better for creating realistic looking images. But what I've noticed is that if you get into the art side of things, where you're doing more conceptual, not realistic things, but like cartoony or illustrative type things, you can kind of come up with things that are more usable in using the Microsoft Bing image creator. So let's just type in samurai. And let's go traditional ink style with red and black, beige background, or let's just say parchment paper background. And scene with ocean, waves, fish, roses. Let's just see what it comes up with. It may be so off that we just can't use it, but it may be something good. And the second alternative would be I could just fix his hands, which sometimes that works out. So these look pretty good. The roses are more detailed. It's got the right coloring. It's got the parchment paper effect. Let's there's another process you can do too. So this one looks good, but then if you look at the side, everything's cropped off, and I'd have to re-illustrate that. So sometimes you can click on this landscape selection right here, and it'll make it wider, so you'll have kind of more graphics to work with. Yeah, so that's great, because now you have the edges here to work with. On this side you do. You still have a cropped ocean right there. So let's open this up in a new thing here. You can see the resolution looks pretty good. I like the way his expression and the fish and things like that. That looks really cool. So I'm gonna copy this, or actually I'm gonna save this into our folder again, and I'm gonna call this rendered 1. And then, because this is like it's kind of a smaller resolution, I'm actually gonna open it up in Gigapixel. Alright, so now let's place this one in here, so you can see that the 4X version there. And this one's just a lot bigger in the scene, so that's good. Let's see here what we can come up with. I'd like to kind of put the edge of those fish to the side, so that along this edge is where the middle section would be. I'd like for that to be matching up to beige, so there's no graphics being cut off there. And for this one too, it may work better to flip it. Yeah, it might. I mean, that ocean wave and stuff is right there, but we'll try that. I don't really want too much of his shoulder to get into that area right there, but let's try something like that. I like where this rose is landing there as well, how it's kind of near the front. Alright, so just gonna go ahead and get rid of the old one back here. Another thing I do too is, you know, I've got the mask area. If I press Control and press the mask there, it kind of does a selection. One thing I like to do is take and do a stroke of a high contrast color like that there, so I can definitely see where the edges and things like that are. Sometimes that's kind of helpful, especially once we go look at this here. We can see we need to create more graphics at the bottom and at the top to kind of overlap this, because ultimately we want it to come out quite a bit. Like, we want that rendered paper to kind of come out like that. So let me go ahead and I'm just gonna select a background color that's somewhat close and fill that in there. And then I'm just gonna do a mask here and just feather the edges a little bit. So something about like that. Now there's some detail around there that I liked. That area where I changed the color of that coat back there is kind of throwing me off. So I'm just gonna turn that off for now. So basically just make sure all of our blending kind of looks right here. I'm getting into some of these detailed areas. And then I'm gonna go bigger again to kind of feather it out more. like that. And so another thing too, like I have no doubts that this Japanese writing is inaccurate because AI created it. I'm gonna kind of leave it there now because I would just show this to a client just to even see if they like this concept, because you don't want to spend a bunch of time cutting that out and putting correct lettering just yet, because they may look at it and say, yeah, but I kind of want a samurai that had a mask more so, or something like that. So I'm just gonna leave that like that. I do feel like it needs a little bit of elements up here at the top. So sometimes you can kind of clone some things up there. I feel like one of the main design elements too is just the texture in this paper right here. So let's go back to Image Creator, and let's just try parchment paper background. This should be pretty easy for an AI image creator to create. It's a little bit easier to do these videos too because you're not really using other people's images. Let's type plain. That's a little better. That one's got some cool textures right there we can definitely use. So let's download that one. And rather than upscaling it, I believe I'm just gonna use it where it's at. So yeah. So I want to grab these textures here, not where it's like super dark, but just kind of around the edge. Actually, I probably won't grab anything yet. I just want to place it below the helmet and everything there. And let's just kind of move it up. Actually, if I had, so I was gonna just feather this out and use that texture all up through there, but if I had something that had a little bit of an arc to it, it would kind of lend itself to the design a little more. Oh, this mountain I think would be better. So the top of that mountain may work. So let's download that. I'm actually gonna go ahead and get rid of this parchment paper thing, and let's try them out. All right, so the mountain kind of being in the background could kind of work. You can see we'd have to Photoshop all that kind of stuff out. I think what would work out better would be put it on top and then change the blend mode. Now let me adjust the contrast. Yeah, so I just want kind of subtle. I don't want to take away from what's going on down here at the bottom. I just want it enough to where it's not like there's nothing up there, you know. Another thing too is we've got a hard edge here and a hard edge here. One thing that I like to do is just take that and flip it horizontal and then just drag it over to where it matches right there. So you can see it's perfectly matched. It looks a little too symmetrical, so I think what I'll do is I'll just merge these layers. And then once you do that, you may have to go back and press multiply again. So now I can go in here with this healing brush and kind of just make some of these clouds a little uneven where that's at. And these elements are way outside the area of the helmet too. These Leonardo da Vinci looking flying machines, those would probably get gone from the design as well, because I'm just mainly using the mountains here. And as it gets down to the fish again, gonna remove just a little bit more. Okay. And now let's remove this green outline and kind of look at it. It has a pretty cool look. I noticed this texture and everything works great here, but I feel like it could use something on the front of the chin too. So let's see what we can do for the front of the chin area. I'm gonna use this same mountain range and drag down some of the mountains through here like that. And I'll just erase what we don't need. There we go. Yeah, that's got a really cool look to it. I'm pretty sure he's gonna like that. Now what I normally do is just render this out and save it for the client. So what I normally do is do like a save, and then just do like a screen cap selection in like in Windows, and paste that into a new document. Normally it's the size of the screen cap. There we go, 1581 by 1080. There we go, and then we'll just export it and save it, and we'll just call this helmet samurai. Example 1. And there you have it.